of them, 4 of them to be precise, are special exceptions. 2 of them are variances. And the reason there is a difference there is under our zoning ordinance, if it's an agricultural 2 zoning, a kennel is a permitted use. If it is agricultural 1 zoning, a kennel is not provided for as a permitted use and therefore can only be allowed under a variance. So that's why there's some differences there. But again, the 4, which will include this next one that I call, that are identified as special exceptions, are permitted uses in agricultural 2 zoning. Now, the manner in which they are permitted provides for a special exception hearing, which contains certain additional rules or requirements and provides for the opportunity for the board to place additional restrictions upon those. So it's a little different than a regular permitted use that doesn't even require a hearing. But again, I would emphasize in agricultural 2, kennel is a permitted use. It's just that it has to be permitted by special exception, which requires a hearing and provides the opportunity for the board to determine whether it meets the mandatory requirements and gives the board the opportunity to place some additional conditions or requirements on it. The 2 that are variances are both in agricultural 1 zoning, which means they're not a permitted use, and therefore they require permission to be granted by way of a variance. The findings of fact are different between a special exception and a variance, and we've made copies of those and have them up here on the front table if anyone would like to look at them. I'll be referring to those, I'll be reading them off. I realize that for perhaps many of you, as for me, it's easier to understand and grasp it if I've got it in front of me to read. So we did make some copies. The petitioners have those and they know they need to speak to those, as well as any remonstrators will need to identify why the findings aren't met. The petitioner will need to demonstrate why they are met. So again, those findings, we do have copies of those present. They are different between a special exception and a variance. And as you've reviewed those, you will likely see that for a special exception, there is very little latitude there that the board has. The findings either are met or they're not met. And if they are met, then the special exception by law is to be granted. So again, with the variance, the board has a great deal more latitude in their decision than with a special exception. So just for the sake of clarification, I offer those up. Yeah, help yourself. They're here on the table.
There's about 25 of each there, Lori, so if you just spread them around. I can make more if need be, but if, after you get take a quick look at them, pass them around.
And these are the same as what the office previously?
So I'll call it this time special exception number 427. Guy and Rebecca Staples requesting special exception from Table 1, authorized uses of the Noble County zoning ordinance to allow after the fact approval of operation of dog kennels, breeding, boarding and training in A2 zoning, transportation of dogs to team, sales to the public. Hours of operation will be 2 p.m. to 7 p.m. or by appointment only. Sanitary waste disposal will be land application, no outside employees. Business sign at the road with maximum size of sign 3 by 5 foot. The plan or provision to add a 12 by 40 addition to coal building so kennel runs can be enclosed. The real estate here is located in section 21 of Washington Township, quadrant 200, parcel 4, containing 20 acres. Common locations known as 3837 South, 925 West, Larwill, Indiana, 46764. Before the staples begin, I would again identify that if there are those of you who meet our definition of an interested party, that is residing within a half a mile of their location, that wish to speak in opposition to this, I'd ask you to come and register your name and address with Nathan at this time. And if you please try to do that as quietly as possible so that we can proceed. You may go ahead.
I'm asking for a special exemption to the kennel. For the most part, it's all dogs that I own. Mostly they are for hunting. I do occasionally do breeding. So very few. I sold one in the last 3 years. Most of what I have for myself to hunt with. Most folks that rabbit hunt use 4 to 6 dogs at a time when they're hunting. So I have to have the special exemption for like alcohol dogs. I will be retraining some beagles for some folks, so that's why I have the training in the board again there, because they'll be staying with me. I went through and I've had some noise issues, so I went through. I added a temporary structure around my kennel for now. Added some no bark deterrents, radio stuff, so they can't see everything going around, hear everything around. If approved, I will be adding a 12x40 addition to my pole barn, so it'll be fully enclosed, so I can insulate it, so I can keep the barking, make sure it's not bothering anybody. I went around to all of my closest neighbors and talked to all of them about it to see if anybody had any issues with it. There was a couple that I couldn't contact. One did not want to sign it, but I got 8 of them, which are all the closest neighbors, that were more than happy to be okay with me doing it. I made sure that it meets all the minimum setback to 250 feet from the residence. All the area around me is agriculture, so it shouldn't affect anything around my property. So.
Each of you have that signature page that he was talking about there in front of you. That's correct.
Do you have anything further you'd like to add at
No,
this
sir.
time?
No, sir.
Okay. Did we got at least an interested party?
The interested party notices were sent out, no written responses came back, but I did have a call today saying that someone wanted to speak, and I believe they're here.
Okay. Okay. We'll hear from you folks in just a couple minutes. Sam, did you look at this property?
Yes, I did, and I was out there late this afternoon, and Gary showed me around. Their house is, as shown here, it's, I don't know if you could say it was centered, but it's in 20 acres. There's acreage to the south, there's acreage to the north, acreage to the east, and I think probably the closest house is probably close to a quarter of a mile. It's well beyond 250 feet. Areas for the dogs either fenced or it was totally enclosed, and in the lower picture you can see where it approved. Mr. Spencer's where he wants to put the addition on to totally enclosed and soundproof. And so as far as there's no other homes close, there's plenty of room. Plenty of acreage around where he's at. He owns acreage around. There's plenty of space for waste and whatever else there might be.
Okay, thank you, Sam. Any questions from board members at this time before we hear from the interested party?
If you could just kind of clarify here, I got 3 pictures here that I'm looking at. The center picture here, I show like an open type kennel arrangement. Excuse me.
And the pictures we sent to you.
Yes. Yes.
And then the bottom picture here, there's some type of like a lean-to or some type of enclosure building off the shed.
Yes.
Where is that in relation to the existing kennel? I got an overhead here I'm looking at too. If you could just kind of.
On the overhead view, the whole building at the center rear of the property away from the road is on the back side of that building.
Is where you're building the structure at?
Yes.
Okay. And what were the dimensions of that again?
12 by 40.
Okay.
plantings that were done, or two, some acoustical material on the building?
Well, at the time, I had nothing around it. I put a temporary enclosure around it to try to stop some of it, and that's the reason I want to add the 12x40 enclosure to enclose them so I can insulate it for a sound barrier.
Just for the sake of clarification, I think all of the board members have already noted that there is requirement in terms of containment of dogs, complying with applicable leash and licensing laws, and thirdly, that the enclosure in which dogs are kept must be a minimum setback of 250 feet from any residence. Those are actually requirements. And then in addition to that, as each of you already have noted, at the discretion of the board, there can be requirements put in place pertaining to screen planting, as well as fences or walls.